My name is Germán Felipe Arbeláez, named Germán because of my father, who is Germán Antonio Arbeláez, and middle name given by my mother. I am 42 years old. Let me see, it's 1976, so that makes me 42 years old. I'll be 43 in January 1st. I was originally born in Colombia, 1976, and I came to the United States in 1991. We moved a lot. The family was always moving, and that's why everybody in the family is born in different cities. When I was born, we were in very precarious times, and everybody was working and supporting the house. So we had grandma. She was running a small candy shop. Back in 1991, I was graduating from high school. I was 15 years old. My parents started me very early at school. But in Colombia, there's mandatory military service. And so my mother was worried that I would be going into the military. And back in the days, there were a lot of problems with the guerrillas, so there was always a chance that as a student, you'd be sent into the mountains to fight the guerrillas. So she was very concerned, and she decided that I was better off here. So I quit school 2 months before I graduated. We went into the consulate saying that we were going to come on vacation, and they gave me a visa. After getting the visa, I traveled within 3 days later. So I literally had 3 days to say goodbye to everybody in my classrooms. Everybody just took off and came over. The funny story is because the thing is, when I arrived to New York, I always thought New York was the city of New York. So when I arrived at the airport and they picked me up, they didn't recognize me whatsoever. They'd been gone for about 4 years, and I was 11. Now I was 15, and the only person who recognized me was my stepfather at the time. My mother didn't recognize me. Waiting for the lights and the buildings, and suddenly I only see trees and darkness. And it was the most curious thing. Where are we going? What's going on? Like, how far are we going? And I realized we were coming to Long Island, and Long Island is a very suburbia place. And I was not expecting that. I always lived in the city. When I lived in Colombia, we lived on a street that had at least 3 or 4 cantinas across the street. And in the middle of the night, you would hear fights going on across, and you would just shove your head up and then people fighting. So the next day, I woke up and I decided that I would go walk the neighborhood. I figured there's got to be some sort of life happening. So I went out in the street and I started walking, and I only saw houses. And therefore, I figured if I keep walking, maybe I'll find a store and nothing. Suddenly I realized I was getting lost. So the first time I saw one person, I decided to practice my English, and I said, "Good morning." The person looked at me really bad and did not answer, and I realized they did not understand me or something was wrong. But then I figured out I just have to backtrack myself, go back to this little place where we were staying, and stay there for I don't know how long. Bob was going out with my mother when I came to this country, and they eventually married. We could say that they married because of my mother's legal situation. Because my mother wanted to have the papers. She did not have papers, and that was the only way for her to get papers. So she did discuss it with Bob. They were dating, and Bob said, "The best thing we can do is get married." So it was a very informal wedding. So he was a very special person who happened to have married my mother. He was a very special person for the family. So Bob comes and says that there is a company that he had sold years ago, and it's going completely down. It's going bankrupt, and they still have a few contracts. It's fire alarms. They still have one installation that's profitable. Do we want to take it on? And I did. And I remember my first meeting, and I had no idea what I was going to go do, but he says, "We're going to have a meeting." And I said, "A meeting for what?" And "You'll see." And I remember showing up at a hotel that was going to be built, and I realized that we were going to be the installers of a fire alarm system. So when we showed up, they were upset because they had no idea about, how many wires to run, what kind of devices, the height, or anything like that. And he says, well, that's why I brought my engineer with me. And I had no idea. So they started asking me all these questions, and I just kind of winged it. And then I remember going out of the meeting and getting really upset. How can you do this to me? This is really bad. And obviously, I had to learn within a week. I had to learn everything because we were stuck having to install this thing. And I almost got a heart attack doing this thing because it was a really bad crash course on how to install fire alarm systems. I do consulting on fire alarm systems because I put my head through bad situations too many times, so I know how to get out of them, and that's my job nowadays. I am married and I have 2 children and 2 girls, and there's 1 girl on the way. So far there's been 2 people that have been the biggest influence in my life. Because when I was smaller, it was grandmother, because my grandmother is a very strong person. She was a person who did not complain 1 minute on her situation, and yet still she was able to come up with time for every single thing. So ever since, when everybody tells me, where do you get your time to do what you do, I say, well, I guess time, you make time. As a second person, I would say Bob. So I have a huge hobby, which is cars and motorcycles, and so I have, over grandma's, I have 4 motorcycles. I have 1 car sitting in the garage of my aunt's house, Pilar. I have another car sitting in the garage of grandma's house. Grandma really lets me get away with a lot. And I have 2 cars here, 4 jet skis. It's getting bad. I have a problem. And because my mother and I were apart for a long time, especially on that transition, I don't think that she was able ever to let go of, am I still training him towards, this is the one person that I'm now meeting. And so we're doing a lot better now, but I think that over the years it's been her understanding that this is a person that I am meeting, or that I am getting to know, as opposed to this is a person that I still have to shape.